Dear friends, we know that Apostle Paul never met historical Jesus. And there is a great problem how much Paul actually knew about Jesus' own teachings. Jesus of biblical Gospels, his teachings is probably best known for parables and aphorisms. But if you read Paul's letters, there are no traces of those parables, perhaps a very few very weak assonances, as if Paul never heard any of Jesus' parables, even the most memorable ones, like lost coin, or parable of a pearl, or growing mustard seed. And thus, liberal theologians could easily pit Jesus against Paul and taking sides with Jesus. Jesus was this gentle teacher of pure spirituality, while Paul was this guy who subverted spiritual Jesus into the cosmic Savior Christ, and his organic, peace-loving movement into the organized religion of Orthodox Christianity. Friends, I believe it is unfair to Paul. Firstly, the most overbearing and doctrinal excesses of organized religion can be found in letters which were forged in his name. He never wrote them. And secondly, we know that Paul knew a lot about Jesus' teaching. He quoted Jesus, and sometimes even with attribution. Best known and longest example was the Paul quoted Jesus about the Last Supper. Frankly, any of these attributed quotations predate in writing anything in the Gospels by at least a generation. And then there are even more interesting examples when Paul quotes Jesus without actually letting us know that he is quoting him. Those are unattributed quotations, and thus strong argument for Paul's good familiarity with Jesus' teaching and his ethos. Take, for instance, such characteristic and pivotal teaching of Jesus to love one's enemies. Well documented in Gospels of Matthew and Luke, Paul quotes it in his letter to Romans in chapter 12. And he quotes it from memory, not word for word and exact grammatical forms, but using same word roots and similar parallel structure. And by the way, Paul is at least 20, perhaps 30 years older than those Gospels, and thus the love of the enemies is one of the strongest confirmed teachings in early church, getting very close to the requirements of modern historiography of two independent ancient sources. And so, yes, Paul is only seldom quoting Jesus directly, and he might not know much of his parables. But yet, Paul got Jesus right, at least his important, if not outright pivotal message of loving enemies. And that is what many soft-core and shallow liberals even now don't want to hear and know about the Bible. Join us this Sunday as we will concentrate again on this important message of loving enemies, and we will also grapple with its quandaries, especially in the letter to Romans.